Over the last year, we've seen the launch of various multiplayer FPSs, and unfortunately, quite a few of them have been a real disappointment. From Battlefield 5's unfinished state at launch, to Insurgency Sandstorm's unoptimised and content-light offering. And this in turn has got me thinking, where are the actual alternatives? Where are those unsung gems that have slipped under your radar? So today in this video, I'm going to present my top 5 in no particular order, underrated shooters that are absolute gems. Now, as a full disclosure, you may find that results may vary for you, but I will say this, these games may not have the best graphics, they may not have the biggest player bases, they may not have the best guns, they may not have the best insert term here, but each and every one of those games I have had a lot of fun playing and I would recommend to anybody. Right, enough introductory waffle, let's just get straight into the meat and potatoes of the video. So first up we have Insurgency. Now this modern day shooter started off originally as a mod built on Valve's Source engine before going on to be launched as its own standalone game in 2014. The main draw of this game, for me at least, is its excellent hardcore gunplay and unforgiving one-shot kills. There's also multiple modes such as push, firefight, conquest, etc. Another great thing about this game, modding. There are tons of great mods from this game, from character skins, gun skins, maps, you name it, there's a ton of stuff in there to enjoy. Now, Insurgency is famed for its PvP play, but it also has some excellent co-op versus AI. And I have to say this about the AI, it is pretty decent. I used to say it was outstanding, but maybe I was being a little bit too much of a fanboy there. It is pretty good, and it just makes co-op just really entertaining. There's nothing better than going with a few chums, playing a couple of co-op maps with mods turned on max, basically, and blasting away. It's just highly enjoyable. Now, apart from this, there's one other thing which I've always found particularly outstanding about Insurgency, and that is its night vision. I've got to be honest, I think it's the best night vision I've ever actually used. Now, I've used it in other games such as Arma, but for some reason, within Insurgency, it just seems to be done so well. You're walking around, the way you get blinded if somebody flashes a light in your eyes, just using it in the darkness, just the whole way it's been crafted into the game is spot on. Now, Insurgency isn't actually a perfect game. I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect game, so what are the downsides? Well, first of all, I don't think there's enough official content. I think there's about 18 or so maps, if I remember correctly, which when you've played the game for any amount of time, you realise just isn't enough maps. Now, they usually come in a sort of day version and a night version, so that kind of helps with the longevity of the game, but it's still not perfect. And then couple that issue with the fact that players seem to consistently want to play the same few maps all of the time. That is a major annoyance for me. I am sick of playing the Pange and the Ministry maps now. They're great maps, but I never want to play them again because I've played them so many times because of the way the end of round voting structure works. People always pick those maps, so a little bit of annoyance. But if you're new to the game, it shouldn't be too much of an issue, considering that the game is actually so cheap usually. I've seen it sold for $1, £1, or given away free, so I'm going to give that a bit of a slide when it comes to the actual map content, so take it with a grain of salt. It is seen as a bit of negativity sometimes, but not always. And finally, let's talk a little bit about the competitive mode. In fact, there's not a lot to talk about here if we're honest. The game did come with a competitive mode. It's got the classic sort of 5v5 matchmaking structure. It's quite a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. However, the scene is pretty dead, and I always found it quite hard to get into a game with an actual full complement of 5 players aside. So if you can get a match, then great, but more often than not, you're not going to get a full 5v5. There are a couple of leagues around still as of 2019, but most of those have moved on to supporting Insurgency Sandstorm, which actually I have to say, I'm afraid it has the same issue that Insurgency Source had, i.e. the competitive scene is kind of dead. It is a very, very small scene, which, when you think about it, is criminal because of the sublime gunplay you get in both of the Insurgency games. I don't know what happened there, it's just not hit big with the public. I think the main issue that Insurgency has always had, and it's not a negativity, but it's just always been a very, very, very niche game. But niche doesn't mean bad, and in this case, it's rather excellent. So, my advice, if you see it, pick it up as quick as you can. Now, moving to our next game on the list, we stay with NWI, who in 2017 released Day of Infamy, which is a hardcore World War II shooter. Now, if you think Day of Infamy looks a lot like Insurgency, well, there's a good reason for that. It originally started off as a mod for Insurgency, and it could be considered the missing link between Insurgency and Insurgency Sandstorm, because it was in Day of Infamy that they introduced the Commander and Radio Man combo. You know, the one, you've got a Radio Man, you've got a Commander, and you need them working in tandem so they can call in airstrikes or smoke barrages, etc, etc. As always with an NWI title, you get quality gunplay, the classic one-shot kill, very hardcore, pretty quick actually as the game goes. I found it much faster paced than than Insurgency itself. Along with the great gunplay, you get some awesome mods, as always. Two that stand out for me were the Vietnam mod and the World War I mod, Screaming Steel. Unfortunately for these games, not the biggest player base, which is a shame because of the work that went into them. I mean, they are some primo quality mods. Thankfully though, as always, we have some tip-top AI for co-op, so you can always play that way. And little shout out, an extra kind of bit of icing on the cake. Best looking flamethrower fire I've ever seen in any game ever. It is awesome. But those are some of the good points. Oh, actually, before I forget, you also get some sweet little drops that you can sell. You get badges, if I remember correctly, kind of insignia from World War II battalions and squadrons, and those could be sold on the Steam marketplace. Obviously, the better you are, the more of those you get. It's kind of few and far between, but hey, it's a freebie, isn't it? Anyway, those were the good points. Now for the bad points. Load times. Load times are unbelievably long in this game. It just makes you wonder what were they thinking, because it really does actually put me off at the best of times. I think, shall I play some Day of Infamy, or no, I think sod it, I don't want to wait for the maps to load. I'm just going to play some good old-fashioned Insurgency. And also, it looks awful. I have to say, I don't know what they were thinking over at NWI when they released this game in 2017, I believe it was. So, you know, we're talking a couple of years ago. It looks bad. It's adequate, let's face it, adequate, but come on, we're expecting more at this stage of the game from a organisation such as NWI. Anyway, because of that, it made me think that maybe this game should have stayed a mod, really. Did we really need it? I have to say, I don't really enjoy the Radio Man combo, and in fact, the best thing that a Radio Man can do with the Commander is call in a smoke barrage. Now, if you go in and have smoke grenades, their effectiveness has really gone away, so I don't know. Did it need to be made? Maybe it should have stayed a mod. But having said that, I picked it up for a song. I think you can get it for like £3 or £4 in the Steam sales, and you know, and it's very cool. It's a great little game. Totally worth getting. I'd have to say it's a lot better as a World War II game than a lot of the newer ones that I'm seeing out on the market at the moment, so maybe give it a go. Right, so let's move on to the next game, and that is the criminally underrated Dirty Bomb. For me, Dirty Bomb was the best free-to-play, objective-based FPS that I've ever played. It was awesome, and the fact that it was free was just the icing on the cake, really. The game itself had a really cool kind of London vibe about it. Of course, I'm a little bit biased, I'm from London myself, but it was kind of a futuristic setting, but not kind of outrageously in the future. It's kind of like, you look at the settings and you go, yeah, I could see that happening in a couple of years' time. So anyway, the game itself was very fast-paced, with unusually coupled together with a very long time to kill. So that took a little bit of getting used to, but when you did, when it clicked for you, it was just awesome. However, never forgetting that teamwork was always key to success in this game. Now, the problem that Dirty Bomb had, and it's still available, but unfortunately development has stopped. Now, what I was going to say was, the problem that it had was that it came out at a time where Overwatch suddenly kind of just rocketed into the stratosphere with popularity, and I think that just kind of stole the thunder from many games such as Dirty Bomb. I think there are a few others, but Dirty Bomb was the one I was playing, and you really kind of noticed how, well, you ask yourself why is a game that is this good just not succeeding, whereas a game such as Overwatch, which is, you know, another kind of, you could call it a hero-based, character-based shooter with objectives, why is that so popular? I never could understand it, but then again, one of the problems that DB had was that it kind of stagnated in its development. Now, originally you did have a really good selection of characters to play, but unfortunately its development moved on more and more characters were brought in. I think this is probably to fund the game itself, because as I say, it was free to play. So SD had to make their money, SD or Splash Damage, the developers, had to make their money from somewhere which was selling things like, weapons and, character packs, basically, if I remember correctly. Anyway, problem with that was too many characters were getting pushed in, which unbalanced the game. Now, couple that with the actual lack of new maps and modes, because there were quite a few modes, but they were actually removed for whatever reason. Apparently they weren't popular, but that was a bit of a mistake. So you ended up with a bunch of new characters, a massive roster basically, for very few maps and very few modes, and people got bored of what there was. That was the main reason that I actually stopped playing Dirty Bomb. I just got bored of seeing the same maps all of the time. It's a little bit like the issue I have with, say, Insurgency Sandstorm these days. I'm not playing that game at the moment. Why? I'm bored of the maps. And this is what happened with Dirty Bomb. Criminal, really. Could have been a great success, but anyway, still available, still playable at the moment. I suggest you actually give it a go, because, you know, you can see what could have been. So yeah, underlining all of that rant, great little game, left to sort of stagnate. Still available, but as I say, development has stopped, so have a go now before the servers close. And what have you got to lose? It's a free game. So now we come to our penultimate game in this top 5 underrated list, and that is Rising Storm 2 Vietnam. Now, I've had a strange relationship with this game. It's been very love-hate with the passage of, I was going to say the passage of time, but it's rather with every single update. I've gone from liking to hating to liking to hating. It's been very weird, and I'm back on the likes. I don't know what went wrong with the updates, but there was always something not quite right with some of them, and I just couldn't get on with the game. But finally, we've got this newest update. It's awesome as far as I'm concerned. I love this game, and I can't recommend it highly enough. So basically, what is Rising Storm Vietnam? Well, as it says on the box, it's a shooter, and it's based in Vietnam, well, during the Vietnam War. It's got a very similar vibe to Insurgency. It's got great gunplay, similarly unforgiving. There's plenty of one-shot kills, and unfortunately, when you start off, you're going to find yourself doing quite a few team kills. There's no two ways about it. There's a lot of team killing going on in this game, and it's not your fault, you know. But apart from that, once with experience come the headshots and a lot less team kills. You kind of know what you're doing. The basis of this game is infantry combat. However, there are helicopters. There's some attack helicopters, and you've also got transport helicopters. I tend to stay away from helicopters myself because I keep crashing. So. But if you're into helicopters, this is probably your jam. So, what else is there? Well, what I really like about this game are the modded maps. There's plenty of modding going on in this game. And we've recently just had a total overhaul drop for the Winter War. That's the precursor to the Second World War between Finland and the USSR. So if you want some bolt action thrills, give that a go. Rising Storm 2 comes with some pretty standard modes. You've got territories, which is basically their version of Conquest. You get some 8v8 skirmishes going on. So pretty standard fare for up to 64 players. That's not including their mega server, which is, I think, something like 256. I can't remember. Or was it 128 players? Anyway, check out the mega servers. They're ridiculous. My favourite thing about the game itself, actually, or my favourite mode, rather, is the war campaign, which spans the whole timeline of the war. So you're basically starting back in the 67, 66, and it goes through all the way to 1975. Pretty interesting concept. The winners of the previous round decide which territory they're going to fight over. People kind of vote on which factions they want to play, whether they want to be the Australians, the Americans, or the ARVN, which is like the South Vietnamese army. It's the same again for the North Vietnamese. You decide if you want to be the regulars or irregulars. So quite interesting. It's not like the same boring maps all the time. You're also deciding sort of which map as well. And speaking of variety, you also have a choice of what type of soldier you want to be. Obviously, you have 6-man squads, you get a squad leader, and then you'll also have a choice of becoming either just a normal foot soldier or grunt. And if you're lucky or quick enough, you can choose one of the specialities. That would be something like sniper or an engineer or machine gunner, etc, etc. If you're feeling particularly Napoleonic and want to be in charge of the whole thing, you can also choose the commander role. And that means you get to rain down like fiery death from above on your enemies. The game does have what included, but as always, it's kind of a hit and miss thing. Not the actual quality, that's fine. I feel that it's just down to the luck of the draw of who you get paired with in a squad for VoIP to really be worth even using. So what about negative points? Well, just tying back to what I was saying about VoIP earlier, a lot of people are complaining about getting blown up indiscriminately by their own side of field. That's kind of one of the issues that comes from VoIP, lack of communication. If your commander is telling you, hey, don't go here because I'm going to bomb this place, there'd be a lot less team killing. So communication is king. Otherwise, this is what happens, and this is one of the number one issues that players have, that they're getting blown up by their own commanders. What's another issue? Again, team killing, but I feel that's pretty much dealt with experience. The more you play the game, the less you do it. It's a pain when it happens to you, but c'est la vie. And finally, the one thing that really, really annoys me is load times. I don't know what it is with tripwire games, they always seem to take forever to load. But if you can deal with the load times, then you're in for a treat. So let's move on to the last underrated game. What can I say about Squad? Squad is probably one of my all-time favourite games, which in turn is based on one of my all-time favourite mods, which was Project Reality, which in turn again was based on one of my all-time favourite games, Battlefield 2. Weird. Squad emphasises a more realistic and slower paced team orientated gameplay, which is based around 9-man squads. Now each of these squads will have a squad leader, and that is the most important role in the game. This is the person who will give you your orders, will also control what defences are built or what standing placements need to be built in the game. That is quite intensive as a role, so if you're new, I wouldn't advise playing that, but if you can actually get your head around it, very satisfying to play. In fact, for the egomaniacs out there, it's great ordering people around, but obviously within boundaries, because I found that when I have people who are just a bit arsey, I tend to leave the squad. It's better to get on with your colleagues, I find, rather than go around pissing them off. You're likely to get fragged. Anyway, apart from the squad leader, we have several other roles. We have specialisations such as LAT, light anti-tank. We have medics, which is my favourite role. I just love going around saving people. Brilliant stuff. Really appeals to my god complex. We also have machine gunners, etc. And now, actually, before I forget, since there's been a new update, you've also got engineers, sappers. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there, actually. Very, very decent game. So if you like playing a wide variety of roles, give that a go. You can also find yourself being a member of tank crew, because obviously there's now various tanks and APCs in the game, which are a hell of a lot of fun. And since the latest update, everything runs a lot smoother. They upgraded recently to the Unreal Engine 4.2, so just an awesome game. The one thing that they don't have, though, there's no aircraft, no helicopters, no planes, nothing like that. It's not for everyone, though. If you're somebody who is a bit of a lone wolf, then I've got to say, stick to Battlefield, stick to COD, because it's all about the team play. There's no room for people who are like just running off, lone wolfing it, because it's pointless. You've wasted your money, and you're wasting everybody's time. Another thing as well, don't be a squad leader if you haven't got a mic. That is the number one thing that will piss people off, that especially piss me off. I'm not afraid to admit it. I've TK'd squad leaders who haven't got mics. People have got to learn. The game itself, I don't find its level of intensity anywhere else. Nothing quite beats that kind of end of round feeling when tickets are going down, people are going down, and you're just desperately trying to like stay alive. It's just the intensity, absolutely nuts. I love it. And on top of that, when a barrage comes in of enemy artillery, brilliant stuff. But anyway, as I said, not for everyone, but if it's for you, you're going to love this. Now, although I've heaped a lot of praise on Squad, okay, no game is actually perfect. I enjoyed it a lot, but it still needs a few things here and there. Now, one of the things I'd like to see, for example, is an introduction of different vehicles. Now, yeah, we've got tanks, we've got APCs, we've got motorbikes, but I would like to see something maybe like boats and helicopters, something to open up gameplay to some different elements. And speaking of that, actually, maps. I get very bored of the maps. Every year there's an update. A couple of new maps are introduced, but you get very bored of playing the same maps. I'd like to see an Armour-like approach where you can have custom maps put in easily. There is an option to have custom servers, but let's face it, those are used by clans, and if you go on there, you'll see the difference between the public, well, the normal servers and the custom servers. Everyone's playing on the standard servers, where you're having to play the same maps day in, day out, and even though they're very large, which is a great thing, you do get bored of them, and you get bored of using the same techniques to try and overcome any obstacles. Overall, I'd just like to see a major uptake of modding in general. Now, it does exist, but it seems like modding is being done for modding's sake, which is kind of a strange approach. Kind of exists as a separate entity to the rest of the game. It's not handled the same way, say, modding is done in Arma 3. And this is what this game needs. You know, we want to play different scenarios, sort of say a Vietnam War or a Second World War map, you know, a chance to change character, uniforms, weapons, etc. This is what I think is actually holding Squad back quite a bit, but hey, at least it's in there, even if it's not as prevalent as I'd like it to be. So that was a quick look at my top 5 underrated shooters. I'd love to know how you guys feel about it. Let me know. Do you agree? Do you disagree? As always, put the comments down below. And until next time, my friends, this is Hipkelt, signing off.